Nick Saban's record number of championships is so blinding, there's a game college football fans play. If you plucked a man who's won 7 national titles and dropped him at one of the sport's worst programs, could he still win it all? This is a misunderstanding of why Saban is the best at what he does. Sure, if Nick was the head coach at New Mexico State, they'd probably be pretty damn good by New Mexico State standards. Just like Toledo, Saban's first head coaching job for a single season in 1990. But Saban doesn't conjure wins. He's not a warlock, we think. And like any other coach, doesn't possess a mythical ability to land championships without the mandatory resources, namely good football players and lots of money. How he manages those things so effectively and ruthlessly, now that is some kind of magic. When LSU fired head coach Jerry DiNardo in 1999, boosters, fans, and even the Tigers' own athletic director and chancellor couldn't decide on a replacement. Out of ideas, LSU called on outside headhunters with NFL connections to fix a program in decades-long disrepair. Their suggestion? Nick Saban, the dour head coach of Michigan State. As a former NFL assistant under Jerry Glanville and a close friend of Bill Belichick, Saban had plenty of fans in league circles, and just like that, LSU fell ass backwards into the greatest college football coach in history. Oh, that LSU chancellor's name was Mark Emmert, and later on he became president of the entire NCAA, which explains so much. But Saban was the stoic son of a gas station owner in West Virginia's coal country, raised to ignore success and focus purely on the work, the foundation of what would become Saban's famous process. His personality was cold. He wasn't a native of Louisiana, and he lacked the kind of gregarious, evangelical personality popular with title-winning head coaches of the day. But if you're thinking that doesn't sound out of the ordinary, that a hard-ass outsider takes over a national football brand, we've heard that story. Yeah, that's the point. Nick Saban made that move normal. From the moment he became a coach, Saban sought college jobs that successively increased his odds at landing the best players in recruiting. The Spartans had just finished 9-2, and the ever-career-minded Saban was convinced he'd hit the ceiling of what East Lansing could offer. He jumped at the chance to go to LSU, formerly a national power, then lost in the sport's scratch-and-dent pile, specifically because in 1999, Louisiana yielded the most NFL players per capita. Saban's work in Baton Rouge would define his reputation. He took a resource-rich program suffering logistics and leadership concerns, and then micromanaged those problems out of existence. He also pushed LSU to spend money on facilities, on non-football staffers to help with conditioning and academics, and on assistant coaches. At LSU, Saban assembled a lineup of elite recruiters, strength and conditioning assistants, and future head coaches. As a result, the Tigers won a national championship in January of 2004, ending decades of irrelevance. In a culture once defined by regionality, tradition, and cronyism, Saban professionalized every aspect of program management he could, which made it inevitable that he try to apply his process to the professional ranks. And he failed. The NFL is very, very different from college football, especially if you require total fealty from your labor force and unilateral control from your stakeholders in order to deliver success. Saban doubled his salary and earned a 5-year deal from Miami, but couldn't mastermind every aspect of the Dolphins, and thus, according to him, couldn't implement that famous process. There's a limit to everything in the NFL. Salary caps, meeting times, free agency windows, you name it. Demanding extra from millionaires in the league is a lot more like requesting, which is a problem for someone convinced that outworking the opposition is the fastest way to success. So while it's possible Saban's football bona fides could have eventually translated to NFL success, once he felt like he wasn't capable of implementing his ideology, he wasn't interested in waiting around. Okay, so now you're probably thinking, well, if the NFL doesn't allow for despots, what about Bill Belichick? It's a good question. Belichick is the reason Saban paused his college career after that one season as head coach of Toledo. Saban left the Rockets to work as defensive coordinator for the Browns under Belichick. So what's the difference? Ownership, for one. Thanks to a strong relationship with his boss, Belichick was able to wrest the total control in New England that Saban desired from the Dolphins. It also hurt that Saban's process shtick did not work with veteran pros. He showed them no empathy, and in turn, They hated him. They taunted him. They played pranks on him. While he's equally humorless, Belichick is much more well-versed in how to treat and motivate pros. Also, having Tom Brady police the locker room for you is a big help. So just think of the cop Drew Brees could have been for Nick's Dolphins. According to Saban himself, Brees, a free agent in 2006 who had undergone reconstructive surgery on his right shoulder months prior, was failed by a Dolphins team physician who reported directly to ownership. But Brees was healthy enough to be coveted by multiple teams in free agency and landed in New Orleans. So instead of a legendary record-breaking Super Bowl MVP, Saban ended up with veteran Dante Culpepper and a sub-500 record as an NFL head coach. Saban has since admitted that he wanted out the moment the Brees deal fell apart, and it's kind of hard to blame him. Luckily for him, college football's Tiffany program was in dire need of a new dictator and willing to spend subserviently for as much and as long as it would take to return to glory. A reeling Alabama landed a wounded Saban from the pros at the end of 2006, and pretty much everyone expected success. After all, Saban had knocked the rust off of LSU and built a national champion, and if you thought frustrated boosters in Louisiana were eager to buy their way to success, buddy, welcome to Tuscaloosa. This was the ultimate mess to micromanage. Alabama suffered from way too many cooks in the booster kitchen and noise around the program. When Saban arrived in Tuscaloosa, his initial move was to send a message to every booster, former player, athletic department staffer, and anyone else who fancied themselves part of the Crimson Tide universe. From now on, Saban was the tip of the spear. Bama finished 7-6 in his 2007 debut. By January of 2010, Alabama were undefeated national champions. Saban had built another championship program without any changes to the process or any adjustments from his time with the Dolphins. Alabama's unlimited desire for dominance matched their deep pockets. After a 3-loss hangover in 2010, Alabama won back-to-back national titles in 11 and 12. Off the field, Bama consistently recruited the best players in the country by pouring extra staff and insane hours into evaluation. Then they developed as many of those players as possible into NFL draft picks, with a conditioning program that mirrored the pros. The frequency and consistency at which this occurred turned recruiting, the sport inside of college football, into something of a moot point. Rather than battle above or below the table, Saban, now a 4-time national title winner, could simply point to a top prospect weighing the tide against any other program to Bama's cavalcade of Saban-developed players in the NFL at any position. On the field, Alabama didn't look like the work of a chess master. It was like playing a game of checkers against a bulldozer. Bama's defense smothered opponents with their size and strength, and a heavily run-based offense shortened games and reduced risk. But college football is notorious for its sudden evolutions, and critics were quick to pounce on Saban's on-field scheme as dated. Specifically when a young, dual-threat quarterback named Cam Newton was able to exploit the Tide defense en route to rival Auburn winning a national title in 2010. At the time, Newton was considered a one-off, generational talent, a thing you really couldn't stop, but not any kind of indicator of the future. Until a mobile, fast Texas A&M quarterback named Johnny Manziel upset the Tide in 2012 for Bama's only loss of that season. Then Ole Miss recreated that upset of the Tide in 2014. In all of these upsets, Bama's normally terrifying defenses looked slow, too big, and out-schemed against mobile quarterbacks. In September of 2015, Alabama lost to Ole Miss for the second time in 2 years. Stunned, journalists declared the Saban dynasty was arriving at its end. This was maybe one of the worst forecasts in the sport's history. To start, the upset itself was bizarre, fluky, and happened early in the season when Alabama was still rotating quarterbacks in a rare instance of personnel issues. Bama committed 5 turnovers in that game, and also, insanely unlikely shit like this happened. Yeah, he ran it all the way in. I mean, even Nick Saban can't outcoach a helmet doink. But you know how this ends, and it's not with the death of a dynasty. Alabama won every game for the rest of that 2015 season, including 7 ranked opponents and beating Clemson for another national title. From 2015 to 21, Alabama made the college football playoff championship game 6 out of 7 times, winning 3 more titles and cementing Saban's legacy as the greatest ever. So, how did the media misdiagnose the most prominent program in the sport again? Because, while people recognize the traits of Saban, they don't understand him. And maybe because of his monolithic image, they never seem to expect him to change. To be fair, Saban never had to change this much. But he did, evolving his defense to become quicker and more adaptive to mobile quarterback play and overhauling the Tide's bulldozer offensive philosophy to join and then beat the trend of tempo and space. Saban hired former USC head coach Lane Kiffin as his offensive coordinator, setting in motion a trend of fired head coaches rehabbing their careers as Tide assistants. Saban, firmly entrenched as supreme leader, bucked the market trend by bringing in the most experienced and talented coaches possible, usually former head coaches of major rivals or even NFL teams, and adhering them to the Bama culture, not the other way around. This flew in the face of conventional wisdom about coaching staffs. The idea of hiring potential usurpers instead of promoting a loyal underling seemed to defy the Saban mythos of control. But, much like Saban's record of success for players, the Crimson Tide coaching staff became a launching pad for second-chance jobs, and big ones at that. Bama's run of national titles in the late 2010s cemented the program as the best in college football, and it did so by leaning into what other successful programs consider to be a disruption. Saban's control, that famous process, never changed, because to Saban, it's not how a thing looks, it's how it operates, and most importantly, how it doesn't react to change until it needs to. That's the secret to Alabama, a relentless desire to reduce uncertainty, reduce emotional swings from young players too high after wins and too low after losses, reduce championship hangovers by fostering a culture of brutal internal competition, reduce transitions by creating an internal language that doesn't change even when the leadership does. As he's adapted, Saban is no less a totalitarian, but where he deserves credit, and where he excels above his peers, is the ability to create consistency through periods of tremendous, fundamental change in the sport of college football. In 2022, he publicly campaigned for Bama's boosters to meet the demand of college football's next big change, paying players via name, image, and likeness. He's already factoring in a potential issue, and one that vexed him in the NFL, increased player agency, into the future of his system. This is why he's misunderstood. He isn't rigid to change. He's rigid in how it will be received, processed, and the effect on his system neutralized. Alright, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to Secret Base. If you're interested in more college football videos, check those out. And also, special thanks to the authors of these Nick Saban books. You should definitely check out.